Say after me, destiny. Say it again, destiny. Just my pastors, we love using difficult words, simplifying those difficult theological terminologies. Now, the word destiny comes from the word destination. Na ninaposema destination, sisemi pale Riverside. Okay? The word destiny comes from the word destination. So when you say, I have a destiny, what you mean is, I have a destination. Destination is a long word. A simple word for destination is end. E-N-D. End. When you say, God has a destiny for me, what you mean is, God has a destination for me. What you mean is, God has an end in mind for me. So let's say that together. God has a destiny for me. God has a destiny for me. God has a destination for me. God has an end in mind for me. The Bible says God is called the Alpha and the Omega. God is the beginning of your life. The day you are born, God gave you a beginning. God, who is Alpha, gave you a beginning when you were born. God is called Omega. God is the head. God has an head in mind for you. God being the Alpha and the Omega, He controls your beginning and God controls your ending. That is why a believer should never be worried about death. Because we serve the God who is called the Alpha and the Omega, who controlled our beginning. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you and had chosen you and set you apart to be a prophet to the nations. The first person who saw you was not the doctor or the nurse who helped in your delivery, was not even the midwife. The first person who saw you was God. Before I formed you in your mother's womb. Psalms 139, verse 14 and 15. David says, you saw my unformed body. You knit me together in my mother's womb. All my days were written in your book before one came to be. How precious are your thoughts towards me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I've quoted for you Psalms 139, verse 14 and 15. Now listen to this. God controlled your beginning, and it is the same God who is in control of your ending. Umeshika. That's why a believer should never be worried about tomorrow. A believer should never be worried about death. Why? Because God controls our Alpha and God controls our Omega. God controls our ending. So let's read this together as I begin. God has a destiny for me. God has a destination for me. God has an end in mind for me. Isaiah said that God knows the end from the beginning. God knows the end from the beginning. Simply meaning, nothing surprises God. Nothing surprises God. Because God knows the end from the beginning. And by the way, God never has a plan B. God never has a plan B. The plan of God is always plan A. Because God knew the end from the beginning, so He doesn't have a plan B. Now let me read for you Ephesians 1 and verse 11. The Bible says in Ephesians 1 verse 11, In him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. That is a very powerful verse. Let me read it again for you. Ephesians 1:11. In him we were also chosen. Say after me, I am chosen. Having been predestined. So I think that word. Say after me, I have been predestined. Having been predestined according to the plan. Say after me, God has a plan for my life. According to the plan of him who works out everything. Say after me, God works out everything. So how does God work out everything? The Bible says, who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. Say after me, God has a purpose for my life. And God has a plan for my life. Say it again. And God works out everything to conform to his purpose. That is why there are things that never works in your life. Anything that doesn't conform, anything that is not in line with the will of God for your life never works. The Bible says God works out everything to conform, to be in line with the purpose of his will. So God has a will for your life. Nobody in this house is here by chance. Nobody was born by chance or by luck. Nobody. For you to know God has a destiny for you, for you to know God has a purpose for your life, ask yourself these questions. The first question, among the 1 million possibilities, among the 1 million seed that raced, that did 100 meters race in your mother's womb, how comes it was only one that conceived? It was only one seed that caused the conception. And all the other 1 million possibilities turned back. That's why God is saying Jeremiah, do not say I am young, I can't become a prophet. I knew you. I saw you in your mother's womb. I chose you there. When those 1 million seeds were racing towards the end point, that was fertilization, God chose you. In fact, before you are born, you had defeated more than 1 million possibilities of people. Yani kabla hujazaliwa ulishinda watu wengine possibilities more than 1 million. So it is as simple as this. You won before you are born. You won before you are born. Nobody is a mistake under the sun. Every person is a miracle. You are not here by chance. You are here by God's choice. You are God's choice. God chose you. Ask yourself this question. Why were you the one who won in your mother's womb? 2. Within the 9 months, thousands and thousands and millions of babies were miscarried or aborted. But it never happened to you. During childbirth, many were born as stillbirths. Many died in childbirth. Here you are. In the era of malaria and cholera, many children died during the first 10 years. But here you are. Your life is never by luck or by chance or by coincidence. You are here because God wanted you here. The heart of God is over your life. We are not saying everything is perfect, but what we are saying, you are here, you being here is a miracle. Acts 17. Acts 17 verse 26. It says this, from one man, God created every man, and God determined the times and the places of their habitation. Let me read it again. Acts 17:26. It talks about that from one man, that is Adam, God created every man, and God determined the times. So you are born at the right time. And God determined the times and the places. So you're in the right place. And the places of their habitation. Kwa jira gwere ati kuma mundu umwe Ngai akiumba andu othe na Ngai agitua magatura ko na magatura miaka iriku. Meaning we are born in the right time, we are born in the right place. All those words are summarized by one word. You are a child of destiny. God has a purpose for your life. God has a plan for your life. How many have died because of COVID? And here we are in 2022. How many have died because of accidents? And here we are in 2022. Do you know young people have died because of accidents? Last year. Children in primary school, in high school. People who are younger than you now are dead. Never take life for granted. You are here because God wanted you here. As simple as that. So I'm saying, as I begin my sermon, God has a destiny for you. God has a plan for your life. God has a purpose for your life. You're not here by luck or by chance or by coincidence. You are here because God is not through with you. We have seen 2022 because God is not through with us. We could have backslidden. We could have given up, but here we are. Although we are in pieces, but we are still alive. Although we don't have all the money, but we are still alive. We are breathing. Never take life for granted. Life is the greatest blessing God can give you. And when God has given you life, it means He's not through with you. Iria ugathikiriria inoro, wakati ule utafungulia inoro, matangazo ya vifo, ile ya muturi moiro, ni mogotangathirwo. Usikie na usikie tena jina lako halikutajwa. It means God is not through with you. Ukisoma obituary ya Nation newspaper, usione picha yako pale. It means God is not through with you. Say after me, God is not through with me. It means God has something in store for you. And I want to say this to all of us. God has something in store for us in 2022. Yes, you have made mistakes in the past. Yes, our history is not that bright. But because for this reason we are alive, God has something good in store for us in 2022. So today, I want to give you 7 points. And I've already given you one. About destiny. Principles of destiny. Principles of destination. Simply, how can you reach to your destiny? How can you make it to your destiny? So I'll give you 7 points. I've already given you the first one about destiny. How do we make it to our destiny? There are two wheels of God. W-I-L-L-S. We have two wheels of God. Two wheels. Now listen to this. It will help you as I begin. I can't finish this sermon, but I'll make sure I finish it. I'll make sure I give you the 7 points. There are two wheels of God. There is what we call the determined will of God. The determined will of God. And there is what we call the desired will of God. There is a determined will of God. And there is the desired will of God. Now, the determined will of God, this is what God has determined. it must happen in your life. These are the things that God has already determined in heaven. They must happen in your life. We call it the determined will. God has already determined that wewe utakuwa hii, wewe utafanya hivi, utaishi huku, utapata hiki, utafika pale, utaishi miaka hii. We call it the determined will of God. It has already been determined. Now, you receive the determined will of God through revelation. If God has determined something in your life, he gives you a revelation of it. God speaks to you concerning it. That is why we get prophecies to reveal to us the determined will of God. For example, there was nowhere Joseph thought that he would become a king. The greatest man who ever lived in Egypt. There was nowhere. But through a dream, he got a revelation of his destiny. He got a revelation of the determined will of God. There was nowhere David chose to become a king. He thought he would die a shepherd. But God had determined that David will become king of Israel. So my prayer to all of us is, may God give you a revelation of his will. Another word for determined will, we call it the perfect will of God. The perfect will of God, or the determined will of God, this is the will of God concerning your life. It is perfect. The second will, we call it the desired will. The desired will. Another word for desired will, we call it permissive will of God. There is the determined will of God for your life, and there is the desired will. Now, determined, God has already determined. It is determined. It is set. It is planned by God. It must happen. On a way, it must happen. On a way, it must happen. It is determined. And God will reveal it to you. Then is the desired will. The desired will, we call it permissive. Ni mambo wewe una desire, and I'm going to give you a verse for that. These are the things you desire. A good example of the desired will is King Hezekiah. King Hezekiah was told by God through prophet Isaiah, you are sick, and my will is you die. And so, put your house in order, write your will, because Isaiah, you shall die. Now, Isaiah left, but King Hezekiah faced the war and told God, I have done this and this for you. I don't want to die. You know, can you imagine? Isaiah appealed. Listen to me. God is never a dictator. You can always appeal your case to God. It doesn't matter what people say, or what the devil say, or what witch doctors say, or what doctors say, or what diviners say, or false prophets. You can always appeal your case to God. God has a court of appeal. God is never a dictator. The mercies of God triumphs over judgment. Isaiah told Hezekiah, you shall die. God have said. Onatigoma, si shetani alikuwa amesema. Ni Mungu alikuwa amesema. Na akatuma mnabii. Akatuma nabii. But Hezekiah appealed. And the court of heaven met. And they said, Isaiah, go back. We have added to Hezekiah 15 more years. Listen to me. Nekore maundu gayaga akuheta no wahoya. Let me make it simple for you. Watoto wako. Najua hapa mmelipa school fees. At least hata kwa ujalipa yote mmelipa 50%. Ni kweli? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Mtoto wako alikuambia ulipe school fees? Mtoto wako alikuambia mom nilipie school fees, baba nilipie school fees, alikuforce? In your mind as a responsible parent, father and mother, you paid the school fees of your children without being forced. Hata mtoto hakuomba, hakukupigia magoti, hakukusihi, ulilipa. Unampatiaga chakula bila yeye kuomba. Unampatiaga nguo bila yeye kukuambia nipatie nguo. Unampatiaga school fees bila yeye kukuambia unilipie school fees. Unamweka katika kadi ya NHIF bila yeye kumwambia mam hata juu ya NHIF ni nini. Mtoto wako akwa NHIF bila yeye kujua. Ni wewe ulimweka pale. Wazazi wengine wanashuka insurance ya watoto wao. So the father, the parent, the mother, without the permission of the child, does so many things to the child. You determine, this is my child, atasoma. This is my child, atakula, atapata nguo. Bila huo mtoto kuomba. Kuna mambo mengine, mtoto wako anaenda uko barabara, anaona mtoto mwingine na nguo fulani. Anaona mtoto mwingine na viatu za kuskate. So Favor akiwa sijui class 4-5 alinisumbua sana. Siku zile hizi viatu za kuskate zilikuwa zimekuja. And zilikuwa zina cost 4,000. So vijana marafiki zake walikuwa na hizo viatu. Mimi nilisumbuliwa mpaka nikaambiwa zinauzwa pahali fulani pale Hospital Road na zinauzwa na mtu anaitwa hivi nitakupeleka. Yaani alikuwa ameresearch ni wapi na zinauzwa na nani na ni pesa gapi. Nikanagiwa mpaka nikaharibu budget nikamnunulia. Now I want you to get that. Kuna mambo Mungu anakufanyanga kwa sababu kwa ratiba yake, kwa kusudi lake. Katika kitabu cha Mungu faira yako ambayo iko mbinguni, Mungu amesema nitakufanyia hivi na hivi na hivi. Na hiyo lazima ifanyike. Lakini kuna mambo mengine Mungu anakufanyia because you have desired. You have prayed about it. You have asked. That is why hatutawahi kufanana katika hii maisha. Kwa sababu kuna watu wanasemaga, kelioka, ni 2022. Ameboeka na maisha, chochote ambacho kitakuja nitachukua. Na huyo mtu kuna level hezi pita. Lakini kuna mtu anasema, I want this from God. I am praying for this. I want my own house. I want to get a master's. I want to go to this country. I want to achieve this. I must do this. I am praying for this. I must live a good life. I must do this. These people who desire many things, the levels of their lives are very different from the rest. There are things that God has already determined, and there are things you must desire. There are things that God permits in your life. We call it permissive will, because you have prayed, then God permits it. Permits it. You have prayed, God gives angels permission to come and bless you. So, 2022, do you want only the things that are determined, or do you want to go beyond that? You want to desire things? Yeah? Now, so your destiny has two things. There are things that will happen in your life because God determined they must happen. And there are things you must desire and pray, and God will permit, and God will allow them to happen in your life. So, in your life, ni wewe utajiwekea limitation. You can go very, very far if you desire more things. That is why we have an open shake. Matthew 7:7. Whatever you ask, whoever asks receives. Whoever seeks finds. Whoever knocks the door is opened. Whatever you ask in my name, God has given us a blank, open shake. Now, let me give you now the 6 points. Now, I think for me to keep my word, I will list them for you. And then I give you a verse for each. Now, principles of destiny. The second principle of destiny is dreaming. Dreaming. Proverbs 29 and verse 18. Proverbs 29 verse 18 says, where there is no vision, people perish. Other version says, where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint. Proverbs 29, 18. By the way, many of the verses I'm going to give you today will be from Proverbs and one from Mark. Now, the wisest man, the richest man, the most favored man, the most successful man in the Bible